Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about some big Donkey Kong updates we could see in the supposed Nintendo Direct next week. Now, if you haven't heard, many different people have been reporting and providing rumors of a Nintendo Direct happening next week, supposedly on or around September 12th, which if you account for time zones, may align with September 13th in some regions, which would actually be the Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary. So personally, I'm expecting some Mario anniversary stuff next week. However, given that Donkey Kong is closely tied to Mario, Donkey Kong stuff could also tie into Mario's anniversary. And so I think there's a strong possibility that we may see some Donkey Kong related things in the Nintendo Direct next week, and that might even include possibly an announcement of an expansion or some kind of DLC to Donkey Kong Bananza. And I'm finally going to talk about this now because just this morning I finished the post-game for Donkey Kong Bananza, so I now finally feel comfortable in talking about this game in a variety of different ways, which also means, yes, I will be putting together a review fairly soon, and perhaps other things as well. But yeah, I think there could be some big updates here having to do with Donkey Kong, including maybe an expansion to Bonanza. But before going forward, let me simply take this moment to ask that if you find yourself enjoying my videos about Nintendo theories, news, and rumors, consider subscribing. It would make my day. But let's dive into the big thing I want to talk about here, and that's a potential expansion to Donkey Kong Bonanza, but there are other Donkey Kong things I'll be getting to later on into the video. So when it comes to this possibility, I think it's honestly very likely. Now, maybe it's not announced in the next Nintendo Direct, but I think it's going to happen sooner or later, most likely. The reason I say that is because most Nintendo projects see it some kind of DLC, if not a paid expansion, a free DLC update. But more often than not, when it's a major Nintendo project, we do see some sort of paid DLC. Now, you might argue otherwise because we look at some recent releases and that has not happened, but I would argue that was because we were at the end of the Switch 1 era. All of the different Nintendo developers had to immediately transition over to making games for Switch 2. And some of that might even include content for Switch 2 editions, as we've seen with actually Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That was a relatively late Switch 1 title that we thought we could see DLC, never got any sort of paid DLC. However, we now have gotten Star-Crossed World, which basically is a DLC expansion that was saved for the Switch 2 edition. And if you already have the game, you can buy it as a DLC expansion. And so I expect, now with Switch 2 out, we're going to see some more interesting Switch 2 editions that could have been DLC for some of these late Switch 1 releases. But for the new titles, DLC is going to be on the table. And for what we've gotten so far, yeah, I would say it applies to both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. So in the case of Bonanza, what kind of DLC might that be? Well, the thing I'm thinking, after having played through the game that makes the most sense, is some sort of exploration of DK Isle. DK Isle is referenced throughout the game, but we never actually get to see it outside of seeing it on the map. It's on the map, which is interesting to me because it reminds me of the speculation we had about Mario Odyssey DLC many years back, where we had actually seen that Isle Delfino from Mario Sunshine was on the map for Mario Odyssey. But this was in the pre-release material. It was actually scrapped or taken out in the final release. And so that led us to wonder if there was going to be some kind of DLC for Isle Delfino from Mario Sunshine in Mario Odyssey. But that never happened. This situation, though, I think is different because they didn't scrap DK Isle from the map. No, it's part of the map. Now, maybe you may want to say it's simply a reference, and that is a possibility, but I do think it's likely that Donkey Kong Bonanza is going to have some sort of DLC, and if it's a paid expansion, I think they should include like some actual new content, like actual new areas to explore. What would be the most likely area they would have us explore? Would they have us go back to New Donk City because of the whole Pauline connection? Possibly, but given how much we can explore of New Donk City in Mario Odyssey, I don't think the devs who worked on Mario Odyssey would want to recreate New Donk City for Bonanza again. I think what makes the most sense is they would want to do something different, and so DK Isle makes a lot of sense. Who wouldn't want to see DK Isle in full 3D? We haven't seen that since Donkey Kong 64, which, by the way, I'll get to that a little bit later on into the video. I think this makes the most sense. I feel like it's being hinted at. I would say there's a fairly strong chance this is what it would be. However, as a counter argument, technically, Donkey Kong's house is in Bonanza already. We can explore it. It's a secret area in one of the early on levels of the game. So you could argue that the inclusion of the house implies they are not going to allow us to explore Donkey Kong's overall home, which is DK Isle. And I think that's a solid counter argument here. But what I will say, seeing that house is cool, but it's not the same as seeing Donkey Kong's house in a full 3D perspective. And if they were to go back to DK Isle, maybe they wouldn't even allow us to explore DK's house. Maybe something will have happened to the island that leaves you unable to access that part. But there could still be so much more to explore of DK Isle, and it could also be a lot more opportunity to explore more of the rich history and lore of Donkey Kong. There are a lot of characters that I know a lot of people would want to interact with on DK Isle that we could not interact with throughout Donkey Kong Bananza. So we'll see what happens with that. But there is more. As we talked about before, both Donkey Kong and Pauline are missing costumes in Mario Kart World. We're expecting an update there. There's even something we've seen from the credits of both Bonanza and Mario Kart World that suggests that there are voice actors that have worked on both games, suggesting that the characters could be in both games as well, but that hasn't been the case yet, so maybe it's through DLC. It makes a lot of sense to think that there could be an expansion to Mario Kart World that includes Donkey Kong stuff as cross-promotion. But something else interesting that we may see announced having to do with Donkey Kong during the Direct is perhaps Donkey Kong 64 finally making two Nintendo 64 classics, because we have seen that Forsaken 64 has just been announced, and that was one of the games that was blurred out and hidden from the N64 Classics update video a few months ago. Others that we were able to figure out were Glover, Smash 64, and Donkey Kong 64. So we may see an announcement like this, and I actually think it makes sense to continue the Donkey Kong train right now, because, well, one, the Donkey Kong Park just opened. You want to continue the cross-promotion of the overall Donkey Kong brand. That would lead more people to buy Donkey Kong Bananza and other Donkey Kong-related things. But we've also recently heard from the US Copyright Office that Universal Pictures has filed for a copyright to make a motion picture of Donkey Kong. So we pretty much already have official information that a Donkey Kong movie of some kind, maybe it's not a movie, I guess there's a possibility it could be something else, but some sort of motion picture of Donkey Kong is officially in the works here. It hasn't been officially announced, but we're talking about the US Copyright Office here. So, it seems like something is happening there, and that likely would also tie into the Mario movie, I would say. Donkey Kong is part of the first Mario movie. We're expecting major news for the next Mario movie really soon. Mario's 40th anniversary is coming up after all. They may give us an update on the movie during this Direct. And we'll likely see Donkey Kong there. I doubt they would just wipe him from the story, given he was so prominent in the first movie and this is a direct sequel. And it might be important to do that because if they're going to have a Donkey Kong movie, they want to further popularize Donkey Kong, have him in the next Mario movie, you have the game, you have the park, so that can help lead to a successful Donkey Kong movie when that does eventually come out as well. And so we could see more Donkey Kong and something having to do with the Mario movie or maybe even the Donkey Kong movie itself, although I think it's too soon for that. We could be seeing Donkey Kong 64, we could be seeing Donkey Kong content being added to Mario Kart World, and they could possibly announce an expansion to Donkey Kong Bananza. But I'll just say this one more time, if we don't see a Bonanza expansion announced in this upcoming Nintendo Direct, that does not mean it wouldn't be happening. Now, if we have to go 2 or 3 years, at that point I would say it's not happening. But it has just been a few short months. Still, I think chances are high that we're going to see some interesting, exciting Donkey Kong updates in the upcoming Nintendo Direct. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.